All right, back again. 7.0, 7.4 test review. This one is section 2. So this is to solve. You can solve any way you want. It doesn't specify how to solve. So you can solve by quadratic formula that we just learned. You can solve by completing the square. You can solve by factoring. Since we just did a whole page on factoring, I think that's probably the easiest way, so I'm going to solve any that I can by factoring, and then if I can't factor it, then I'll look into quadratic formula. Okay, so number 1 is x squared minus 6x plus 5 equals 0. So that's a good start. It needs to equal 0 in order to be able to be solved. So there we have it. So because again this has a coefficient of 1 of the x squared, I'm just looking to see if I can multiply to get 5 and add to get negative 6. And 5 times 1 is 5, and if I add that I get 6, but I need negative 6. So if I change my signs, negative times negative is still a positive 5, and when I add them I get negative 6. So this in factored form is x minus 5 and x minus 1 equals 0. So unlike in section 1 where we just stopped after we factored, here we have to solve. So remember, when we solve, we then step in and use the zero product property. The zero product property, or the ZPP as I like to call it, the ZPP tells us that either one of these has to equal 0 in order for the product to equal 0. So either x minus 5 equals 0 or x minus 1 equals 0. And that's how we can solve for x. So I add 5, so x equals 5, or add 1 here, x equals 1. And there is the solution for number 1. Okay, number 2, very similar. I have x squared minus 7x minus 18 equals 0. Again, starting out with the equals 0, perfect. Looking here, coefficient of x squared is 1, so I can look for two numbers that multiply to negative 18 and add to negative 7. 18, I think of 9 times 2, needs to be negative, so if I make my 9 negative, then negative 9 plus 2 is negative 7, so there are the numbers. So this is x minus 9, x plus 2 equals 0. Again, if I was just factoring, I'd be done, but I am solving, so using the ZPP, x minus 9 equals 0, or x plus 2 equals 0. Solve each for x, so we add 9, so x equals 9, or here we would subtract 2, x equals negative 2. And there are solutions for number 2. Number 3. So this is where we come back to, remember number 6 on section 1. If you watch that screencast, I said we would see something like that problem again. And here it is, because this is not a quadratic equation, so I couldn't even use the quadratic formula if I wanted to. So in order to solve this, I have to go and factor out greatest common factor, greatest common variable. So when I look into this, greatest common factor, there is none because the coefficient of x to the third power is 1. So dividing by 1 doesn't matter. So there's no greatest common factor, but greatest common variable, they all have an x. So I have to divide out an x. So that means that x times, and now I do the division. X to the third divided by x to the first is x squared minus 3. X squared divided by x is x, minus 18x divided by x is just 18. Okay, so that's one set of factoring. Now I look at the inside of these parentheses here, and I try to factor that. Since the coefficient of x squared is a 1, I need two numbers that multiply. I'm going to go up here. Multiply to negative 18, add to negative 3. So 18, I think of the 9 and 2, negative 9 times 2. But when I add that, I get negative 7. So if that's not going to work, how about negative 6 times 3? When I add that, negative 3. So there's my pair. So this breaks down into x minus 6 and x plus 3. I still have this x on the outside. So here is the factored form of that equation. Now remember, everywhere you see an x is a possible place for that number to be a 0 and my zero product property to work. So I have 3 terms here. I have this term, and this term. Each one of them has to be set to 0. So either x equals 0, well there's one answer right off the bat, that's nice, or x minus 6 equals 0, or x plus 3 equals 0. So like I said, this first one, that's just an answer right off the bat. X could equal 0. Here I actually have to solve, so I add 6 to both sides, so x could also equal 6. Or here I have to solve by subtracting 3, x could equal negative 3. So this solution actually has 3 possible answers. X could equal 0, 6, or negative 3. Number 4. Another one. X to the third minus 9x plus 8x equals 0. Again, we're equaling 0, so that's good. I'm not going to have a greatest common factor because the coefficient of x to the third is just a 1, but I will have greatest common variable, in this case an x yet again. So let me go through and divide everything by x. Remember, that's what goes first when I'm writing this form. So x, so this is going to be x squared. This is, did I copy it wrong? I did, because this should be squared. So x squared divided by x is going to give me the 9x, negative 9x, plus 8. X divided by x cancels, so this is factored form with the greatest common factor. Now I need to factor out, or factor that middle part, what's left in the parentheses. Coefficient of x squared is 1, so just 2 numbers that multiply to 8 and add to negative 9. I know 1 times 8 gives me 9, or sorry, 1 times 8 is 8, adding them gives me 9, so if I change the signs, negative 1 times negative 8, again, negative times negative positive, and then when I add them together I get the negative 9. So factoring this into x minus 1, x minus 8, that's what the parentheses turn to. Remember to bring down that x that was out front. That way you don't lose out on your third solution. And now we use the ZPP. So x could equal 0, or x minus 1 could equal 0, or x minus 8 could equal 0. So this one's already done for us. Here we have to solve by adding 1, so x could equal 1. Here we have to solve by adding 8, so x could equal 8. So x is either 0, 1, or 8. Okay, number 5. Number 5 is x squared plus 3 equals 6x. So here we have an issue right off the bat because it doesn't equal 0. We have to have equal 0. Well, we can employ some magic here and just subtract the 6x from here, move it to the other side, because now 6x minus 6x gives us that magical 0 we're looking for. And on the other side, I'm just going to push that right into the middle so that it's already in general form for me. So I get x squared minus 6x plus 3. So this is the new equation I want to be working with. Kind of want to forget about that old one because that's not really going to help us in what we're trying to do. Okay, so here we're going to factor. So again, coefficient of x squared is a 1. So I need 2 numbers that multiply to 3 and add to be negative 6. So multiplies to 3 is only 3 times 1, or negative 3 times negative 1. Well, when I add 3 and 1, I get 4. And when I do negative 3 and negative 1, I get negative 4. There's no other possibilities that multiply to 3. And since none of the possibilities that do multiply to 3 add to -6, this cannot be factored, which means, dun dun dun, quadratic formula. So, let me erase this guy here because we're not going to be able to do that. I'm actually going to erase the original problem so I give myself a little bit more room because we all know quadratic formula takes up quite a bit of space. Okay, so there's the original, or there's the problem after we got it equal to 0. Now I'm going to do quadratic formula. So remember, quadratic formula, we have x equals opposite of b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So in order to make this equation work, I need to know a, b, and c. That's the first step. So a is 1, b is -6, and c is 3. Once I know that, I just plug in my numbers. So x equals opposite of b. So b is -6, so this is going to be +6. Plus or minus the square root -6 squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2 times a. All right, starting to solve, x equals 6 plus or minus square root. -6 squared is 36. 4 times 1 is 4, times 3 is 12, so I have -12 divided by 2. I have x equals 6 plus or minus square root 36 minus 12. That's square root of 24 divided by 2. Okay, so I don't remember. This doesn't say to give an exact solution. It just says to solve. So if you want, you can just figure out what the square root of 24 is, which of course I didn't do. So let me see if I can, if I can do that real quick for you. My phone wants to cooperate. So square root of 24, square root, that's not right. Hold on. Square root 24. That's not right either. 24 square, there it is. Okay, so square root of 24 is 4.899, almost really close to 5 because square root of 25 is 5 and 24 is so close. So I'm going to do 4.99 because that's pretty much where we're at. So square root of 24, we can say 6 plus or minus 4.99 divided by 2. And then remember we would have two solutions. So 6 plus 4.99 divided by 2 and 6 minus 4.99 divided by 2. So let me make those calculations. So 6 plus 4.99 is 10.99. Divide that by 2. I get 5.49 or 5.5. So x could equal, this one is 5.5. So x equals 5.5. Or x equals, let's see what the second one is, 6 minus 4.99 divided by 2 is 0.51, or just 0.5. So x, this one equals 0.51, or x equals 0.51. So using quadratic formula, we end up with that. If they ask for an exact solution, then I have to simplify the square root of 24. So I'll go back and do that now. So this is one acceptable answer. I believe on the test it just says to solve. It doesn't say for an exact solution or not exact solution. But if you want to get an exact solution, let me just go back a couple of steps. So we would go back to here, the square root of 24, and remember when we find Square root of 24 can simplify that, take out the perfect square factor, which would be the square root of 4, and then it would be the square root of 6, because 4 times 6 is 24. So the square root of 4 simplifies down into 2. The square root of 6 is not perfect, so we leave it as 2 times the square root of 6. So I would rewrite this as 6 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 6. That's what replaces the square root of 24. And then this gets divided by 2. Both of these would get divided by 2, so I would have 3 plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is just 1, the square root of 6. And this is another acceptable answer. This is an exact answer, whereas the previous answer, 5.5 and 0.51, were rounded answers, because when you find the square root of 24, it's not an exact number. Okay? So either or, I believe, is acceptable on the test. I don't think it says for an exact answer or to round it. All right, let's finish this off. Number 6, 2x squared plus 7x equals 4. Again, it has to equal 0, so let's take this 4 and move it over by subtracting it. So now 4 minus 4 is 0. So I have 2x squared plus 7x minus 4. This one can also be factored using Xbox factoring, or we can use quadratic formula. Since I haven't done too much quadratic formula, let's just do another one of those. So, to do quadratic formula, you need a, b, and c. A is 2, b is 7, c is negative 4. Remember the formula, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root, b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So, x equals opposite of b, so b is 7, so opposite is negative 7, plus or minus the square root, 7 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 4, and that's all divided by 2 times 2. So let's see what we got here. X equals negative 7 plus or minus the square root. 7 squared is 49 minus 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 4 is 32. So, but that's negative, so minus a negative 32 divided by 2 times 2 is 4. Minus a negative changes to positive. So, finishing up over here, x equals negative 7 plus or minus 49 plus 32 is going to be 81. The square root of 81 divided by 4. So square root of 81 is a nice number. It's 9. And now I have my two solutions. So I have negative 7 plus 9 divided by 4, negative 7 minus 9 divided by 4. I'm going to have to erase some of this stuff over here. Go back if you need to. Sorry, but I'm running out of room. Sorry, I cut myself off for a second. All right, so I just erased some of the stuff that was here. Now I'm coming up to my final answer. So negative 7 plus 9 is 2. So 2 over 4 is 1/2. So there's one solution. And then this one here, negative 7 minus 9 is negative 16 divided by 4, which is negative 4. So there's my other solution. So x is either 1/2 or x is negative 4. And there's the final solution for number 6. Okay, so that's section 2.